Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another episode of the Steelers Hangover. My name is Brian Anthony Davis, and I am the podcast producer here at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and I am so glad to be with you once again after a real game. Wow, we've been doing this hangover a long time, Tony, haven't we?
Going on, this is year number 6, right? 2017 was the first season.
Yeah, wow. And I tell you what, so we've been hungover since then, and we're feeling good about it, especially when the Steelers win their opening game against a rival, a team that's beat them 3 straight. And the circumstances on how they won have people a little bit antsy, and we're going to be talking all about that. Shannon White, how are you feeling on this Victory Monday?
Well, not as happy as I normally would be, but we'll get into that. But I think I have the same reservations that all of Steeler Nation has.
Well, I have reservations for the Olive Garden, so let's get this going. I don't, but those are my only reservations. I think we'll talk you off the ledge if you are indeed on it. But first, let me tell you this. You need to be checking out BTSC. That's BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for all of your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. And when I'm talking Pittsburgh Steeler needs, you need to know what's going on and know what's going on first. And you find it here, not just your one-stop shop, your non-stop shop. And that non-stop shop continues. Last night, after the game, what happened? Well, there was a Steelers post-game show as well as a post-game press conference recap from Mike Tomlin. And I had a chance to be on both of those shows. I was glad to be on there, and it's nice when it's a W. This morning, Jeff Hartman celebrated a Victory Monday on our flagship morning show called Let's Ride, and he had the winners and losers from the Steelers win over the Cincinnati Bengals. So check that out. There's going to be some great shows later on. Check out tomorrow morning, the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict. Check out The Fix with Jeremy Betts and Andrew Wilbar in the Scobro Show tomorrow night with Rich and Dave Schofield. There's so much going on. There's also going to be a Mike Tomlin press conference recap, his Tuesday show as he gets ready for the New England Patriots. So much going on. But let's get into the game. Here we go. The Steelers go into Paycor Stadium, which I've got a problem with more than anybody should have a problem with Acrisure, guys. But I'm going to get to that in a second. But they go into Cincinnati, and they take on the defending AFC champions, and they beat them. There were a lot of mistakes on both sides of the ball. The Cincinnati Bengals, well, Joe Burrow had 4 interceptions and had a fumble that was recovered by the Steelers as well. Tony and Shannon, I'm going to ask you this first. I'll go to Tony. Did the Bengals stink? Did they lose that game, or did the Steelers find a way to win that game? I'm going to ask you both. Tonester?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think the Steelers defense was so dominant early on that they gave the offense just so many opportunities to win that game handily, and the offense just wasn't capable of doing that. So I think the Steelers did enough on defense to win, but they rightfully should have lost at the end because of they just broke down. They ran out of gas, but thanks to some special teams blunders by the Bengals, I think they helped keep them in the game, and of course, ultimately they played a hand in the Steelers winning the game.
What do you think, Shannon? Do you think the Steelers deserve credit for the victory, or they're just the recipients of a loss by the other team?
It's funny you said deserve, because that is like the beginning of my stock report article for tomorrow. The Steelers deserve to win that game, if for nothing less than the defense played their best complete and most dominating performance in quite a few years. If you watched across the NFL yesterday, there was a lot of offensive sluggishness. A lot of mistakes, pre-snap penalties, because a lot of teams did not play their starters at all. And the Bengals didn't play their starters at all. So Burrow come in the preseason. So Burrow come in yesterday, and he was coming off the appendectomy surgery. Plus, they hadn't worked together. So going up against a stout Steelers defense that has played together and performed together, I thought the Steelers, did what they were supposed to do. And if they are healthy, which we'll get into, they can be a dominant defense. But I thought they deserved to win. I think the offense did not do their part. And that's why, they almost lost. But the point is they won, and it was a shock to everyone. But because, I wasn't taking into the account how rusty the Bengals would be.
Well, I did not think that was going to be a problem whatsoever, but we found that out the last few years in Steeler Nation here with Ben Roethlisberger barely playing in the preseason, and we have seen a lot of seasons start out. We've seen a couple 0-3s over the last few years, a couple 1-3s. We've seen a lot of non-smooth sailing because teams aren't ready. I know you risk losing a starter, but you've got to start playing those guys, because if you don't, they're rusty and you lose and you have to play catch up. Luckily for the Steelers, they don't have to play catch up, but they have to answer a lot of questions. And a lot of the questions are going to be surrounding around poor play on the offense, and they're going to be surrounding injuries as well. So now let's talk about the injuries first. Shannon, the report today was that TJ Watt showed up. He was bandaged, but he was walking around the Steeler locker room. There's a lot of thought that this might not be a season-ending injury. This could be a 4 to 6 game injury. Will you take that?
Oh, it would be a answer to prayer if he only misses 4 to 6 weeks, because as we was talking before the show, he's indispensable. I mean, he's irreplaceable. And, it would be like anybody's best player going down. You just can't prepare for that. And it will change the fortunes of the season if he misses the whole year. And it's sad because he literally could have won at least one more Defensive Player of the Year award, if not 2. And he started out this year looking even better than he did last year. And then for that injury to happen, it's funny. JJ, was the most dominant defensive player in football. Then he started suffering these type of injuries. And these are injuries you didn't see back in the day in the 70s, guys, because guys wasn't ripped up like they are now. They didn't build their bodies. And I know they stretch and they use nutrition and chiropractors and everything, but they just didn't suffer these type of injuries. But now there's such a fine line, and these guys push their body to the limit to compete. And you see these kind of tears, and it can be season ending. And of course, Steelers have already went through that with Hayward and into it. And hopefully it's not a season ending.
Tony, let me ask you this about your frustration with everybody throwing in the terrible towel already because TJ Watt might be gone for the season. Whether he's gone for the season or not, does that really dismiss 52 other players and a coaching staff?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be naive to say that it's not going to impact them majorly. I mean, he is, like Shannon said, he's their best player. This is like losing Ben Roethlisberger on offense. This would be like losing Troy Polamalu in his prime. He's that important to that defense. And so I could see why people would be frustrated with that, because we know going into the season, or we said going into the season, that the defense had to carry the team because the offense was just going to be so compromised as it's learning and growing. And yesterday we saw another example of that. The offense looked a lot like it did last year, just with a more mobile quarterback. So, I could see why people would say that. The only thing I will say about if Watt were to be down for the year or any length of time is, when Ryan Shazier was lost in 2017, unfortunately, a much more devastating injury, obviously, he was more like the centerpiece of that defense. He did a lot of the heavy lifting. TJ Watt was a rookie. You had Joe Hayden, and obviously he was a fantastic player for them. Obviously Cam Hayward, but I think now there are more good pieces on that defense that they can compensate a little bit better. But they're not gonna make up for his loss totally. You just can't do it. I mean, that's why you pay a guy like that $80 million. If you thought you can make up for his absence with a next man up kind of guy like Malik Reed or Derek Tuska or whomever, you're not going to pay that guy $80 million. You're not going to set a precedent for your franchise and do that. So I can see why fans would be frustrated with that, because it's a huge deal for to lose a guy like that. Hopefully it's not for the whole year. It's just a month.
I just find it insulting, and I understand that, he is an irreplaceable player, but I find it insulting to players like Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, who were lights out for the defense in that game. We're going to talk a little bit more about those fellas in a little bit, but let's talk about the other injuries. What do you guys know about Najee Harris? All the whispers coming out of Pittsburgh saying that it should not be that big of a deal. He should not be gone for too long. Shannon?
Well, I think it is a big deal because he was already dealing with the Liz Frank sprain. And based on reports, it's the same foot. And I don't know if he's re-injured it or injured it more severely, because he didn't look like himself in the limited preseason action he got, or yesterday, in my opinion. And I wasn't the only one that noticed that. Brian Baldinger, he mentioned it as well. I think Harris, the Steelers need to, regardless of how severe the sprain is, they need to rest him and try to get him completely healthy for later in the season. We hate to not have him in there, but those type of injuries is not going to get better without rest. And if he can't play up to at least 90% behind that offensive line, he's just risking further injury, maybe season ending, and he's not going to be effective. So I think that there needs to be some caution, and they need to be smart about everything, the way they handle this.
Absolutely, Shannon, and I agree with you about that. Other guys went out. There were some other injuries in that game. Tony, are they concerning to you, or do you feel like most of these guys, like the Spillanes, like the guys that got hurt yesterday, Hayward went out for a little bit, came back in. Do you have any other problems?
No, I mean, I don't think any of those injuries, they were, the bumps and bruises associated with play, as Mike Tomlin would say. It seemed like that. And it seemed like Hayward was just exhausted. He was gassed. I mean, that guy, if you isolate him on every play, he's just like going to war with the guy he's going against. I mean, the guy's just a wrecking ball. So he was probably just gassed. It was 70 minutes in to the game by that point, or close to it. So I think he'll be fine. And none of the other ones seemed that serious. I mean, maybe Levi Wallace with the ankle. I don't know what the deal is with him, but he's your third cornerback. So if he's not in there, then you have people like Arthur Millette when you're going into those sub packages. So hopefully Wallace his isn't too bad, because he made some plays in yesterday's game, and he's obviously a fine veteran. So, but other than Harris and Watt, I don't think there's anything to be concerned about as far, because Cole came back in the game. So I think they'll be fine with the rest of those guys.
So Minkah Fitzpatrick had an okay game yesterday. He had a pick six, which is, I think that's his third in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes him right now 2 below Rod Woodson and William Gay for the all-time team lead. And I would love to see him get 4 more then, if that's the case. Actually, 3 more, if that's the case. And I'd love to see him be the all-time leader. Minkah is phenomenal to me, and he does a lot of things for this team. I mean, he's in there blocking an extra point. And Mike Tomlin says this, and I agree with Mike Tomlin when he says it. I'm proud of Mike Tomlin for saying it. It's like, yeah, we didn't do anything special on that play. It wasn't anything that we did, You guys saw it. That ball took a long time to get back to the border. Yes, that was. If that guy doesn't get injured, then you really don't have a problem. The Steelers would lose that game.
Right.
Because of both of those kicks, because of the snaps. Snapping counts. And I've been there. I have not playing, but I've been in the stadium. That magical year of 2008, the Steelers lost to Eli Manning and the New York Giants because Greg Warren got hurt. I'm there. And I'm listening on the radio, and I'm like, oh, Greg Warren got hurt. And there were people around me, season ticket holders for life. Like, who's Greg Warren? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
I'm like, that's a big deal. So Harrison's in, and then he could not snap. And James Harrison was their reserve snapper. And I know you guys were laughing about it. Thank goodness they won the Super Bowl, but they lost the game.
Yeah.
And I was with a Giants fan, so that made it a longer ride home. But all I'm saying is that in these situations, this guy is so good. And if you lose a guy like TJ Watt, you've got a superstar on your team besides Cam Hayward. And it's Minkah Fitzpatrick. He looked like a leader even when all those guys were healthy out there. And he had a chip on his shoulder. And Shannon, do you believe when Minkah Fitzpatrick says, we don't like those guys at all? We remember what they did last year. Do you believe that makes him go in like Jefferson from Fast Times at Ridgemont High after he thought the other team wrecked his car and he just killed everybody? You remember the movie, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That was Minkah yesterday, wasn't it?
Again, we're touching on my stock report article, but that's what I was talking about. Fitzpatrick, Minkah played. That's the most physical I've ever seen him play, by far. He wasn't just separating guys from the football; he was separating guys from their senses.
Yep.
I mean, he was just going. I mean, it wasn't dirty hits either. He was leading with his shoulder, but he was just taking guys out. And they would talk trash. He was talking trash back. That's usually not his game.
Yeah.
But he was pissed about last year and everything that went down and how bad they got embarrassed and saying that they quit. And he said, leading up to the week, I don't like them. Don't like none of them. And he went out and he played like he didn't like them. And he showed he's worth every penny they give him. He set the tone for that game and hopefully a trend for the season, because that was a difference maker type game that we haven't seen out of a Steelers safety. He did that a couple years ago, but that's a Troy Polamalu type game. I mean, he had that kind of impact yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that it's one thing to say something. I can't stand when guys talk the talk and then they get out there and they don't walk the walk. He did both yesterday.
He indeed did. Now, Tony, I'm going to ask you this, because if you asked a Bengals fan, I think today, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is public enemy number one with them now. And the reason I say that is because they kind of have a lot of Bengals fans are like that, and they get bent out of shape very easily. And because of the Vontaze Burfict thing, they're kind of looking at it the other way, trying to say, well, our kid's bad, but your kid's bad too. And in fact, your kid might be even worse here. Our kid, Minkah Fitzpatrick, yeah, he's going to get blamed for knocking out T. Higgins. If you're in Cincinnati, how dirty of a player do you think Minkah Fitzpatrick is, whether he really is or not?
Well, you think he's the most evil man on the planet right now, because that's just how it is to be a fan. I mean, he's a worthless POS, as people say on social media. So that's what you think of Minkah. But if you look at some of the plays, I mean, they were edgy, but they weren't like perfect. The stuff that he did, they weren't even close to that. Like the penalty after the Sutton interception, that was basically him reacting to what he thought was going to be a catch by the receiver. That wasn't like he was like headhunting, So that's what that was. As far as the hit on T. Higgins, I mean, did he lead with his helmet? I don't think he did. I thought that was Edmonds that did that. So I don't know. That was a bang play too. And Higgins went to he ducked when the contact was made. So it's not like it was headhunting. So I think that's why Higgins got hurt on that play. So.
Looks like we lost Tony's audio there for a second. And so no, you're not just you're not imagining that, Shannon. It looks like his audio is out. And now Tony's on mute trying to fix the problem. And we'll get back to him in a second. Yeah, that was my mistake. I thought it was Minkah that was accused of going after T. Higgins. But those calls at the end of the game, Shannon, how do you think they were egregious, especially on that last little bit of time? All those keeping drives alive for the Cincinnati Bengals?
5 times.
5 times.
5 first downs via penalty. Even the play where Watt got the injured by throwing Collins out of the way and then jumping up and sacking Burrow. They said that, he had his hand on his face mask and they threw the penalty. There was another play that the Steelers stopped them and there was a ticky-tack pass interference. I mean, there was just so many calls that, as a lot of people have said, it appeared that the refs wanted that to be a close game at the end, in which they got their wish. And there was everybody was watching and everybody was tuning in. It was really exciting, too exciting for me. Anybody that's on blood pressure medication. But it did seem like that the calls were a little one-sided in that fourth quarter. We'll just leave it at that.
It almost felt like the end of Cobra Kai season 4 at the All Valley tournament when, yes, I'm not spoiling season 5, but at All Valley tournament when the refs were paid off. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, it seemed like every time you did something well, that there's some yellow laundry. Oh, there's some more yellow laundry. So it was absolutely a crazy game yesterday. At one point, fellas, were you just hoping it was going to end, Tony? Tony, you still having trouble there? Okay, Tony's still having trouble. Shannon, were you just hoping for that game to end at one point? Because I was playing for a tie.
Yeah, at one point I was like, yeah, just if this thing ends in a tie with everything that's going on, I could accept it. Wouldn't like it, but I could accept it. And then when the Bengals punted the ball back to the Steelers and they didn't even use all the clock and give them that extra time. And then, of course, what a final drive. I mean, the clutch catch by Johnson, incredible catch. And then the off-schedule play to Fairmuth to get him down there in field goal positioning. Of course, then I quickly changed my mind and I wanted the Steelers to finish that off. But that clutch factor is something that, the Steelers can't count on anymore. But I thought that was a good off-schedule play by Trubisky and Fairmuth. And hopefully that's a foreshadowing of things to come.
So let me ask you this. If they would have tied, now, if you're Cincinnati and they would have ended up tying because of the missed extra point, the blocked extra point, that's going to feel like a loss to you. Would it have felt like a loss for the Steelers? I know they had a 14-point lead at one juncture, but when you're an underdog, when you're in a 6.5-point underdog, it's not really a loss, is it?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Tony.
Oh, well, at that point in the game, after losing Watt and fearing the worst and then having that big lead, I think it would have felt like a loss. It would have felt like the Cleveland game from a few years ago when they had that 21-7 lead and James Conner fumbled and that changed the whole dynamic of the game. It would have felt like a loss to me. But just based on because they beat they tied a division rival on the road, the defending AFC champion, but considering you lose your best player and you lose your starting running back potentially for a long time, it would have felt like a loss.
Well, thank goodness it was not a tie. I didn't want another opening day tie like you had just a few years ago. Boy, whew. Those stink. I'm not a big fan of that whatsoever. Now, Shannon, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's about the Steelers not being able to convert in those situations late in the game. Does that mean there should be a quarterback controversy?
Oh,
I had to go there.
Yes, yes. If you watch the game, I thought that when the Steelers got the lead with the pick six, and then they got the turnovers, which put them in good field position, and they got that lead. To me, they started the game trying to be more creative and running some of Canada's offense. Snaps from under center and misdirection and end arounds to Claypool. Had Claypool working out of the slot, which he looked very effective. But once they got that lead, it was more conservative after that. And it was a lot of, short passes, not risky throws, and hoping that the receiver could break a tackle and get the first down. To me, they went ultra conservative, and that kept them from ever getting a rhythm. So it's hard to judge the offense's performance based after they got that early lead.
That's true. That's true, but still, gosh, there's going to be people calling for Kenny Pickett. Tony, who are you calling for to continue to be quarterback or be quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I said before the season he was going to get at least a month. I don't understand what like Shannon said. It went conservative, especially like maybe the last 3 quarters of the game. I mean, they had all those chances early on, and they got 10 points out of it, and they really didn't. They weren't aggressive at all in the passing game. Nothing over the middle. It was just like what you saw the last 2 years. Everything, 5-yard outs, back shoulder throws, just drop back and hit a receiver on the sideline and hope he can make somebody miss. Like Shannon said, it was the same thing we've seen. So I don't know what that was all about because the whole idea of getting a mobile quarterback was so he could move around back there and have a more dynamic offense and maybe compensate for the struggles of the line. But it was Ben back there, just, sitting back there and getting rid of the football as quickly as possible. And I just don't get that. I mean, if you went out to get a mobile quarterback, I think Trubisky, his mobility is, Jim Miller said it was elite a few months ago, the Chicago radio guy, the old Steelers quarterback. And I thought it was pretty good, but not elite. But he looks like Fran Tarkenton, the way he's able to move around. And I don't get why they're not taking more chances with him, sitting back there in the pocket for another second or two and trying to be more aggressive downfield.
I feel like Fran Tarkenton right now, but the 80-some-year-old version of number 10 for the Minnesota Vikings. And what other team did he play for, guys? Do you remember?
Giants.
Yeah, he was a New York Giant. I got to bring this up. We've got our first super chat of the day, and I'm just loving this. I'm bringing this up. Thanks so much to Bill Frost. Dormont loves Tony. Enough said.
It's my buddy Bill.
You've got some, you have some friends out there.
Yeah, we've had drinks together and been to a wedding together. He's a good dude. He's a dad, so he probably never gets any sleep. He's got a young kid, so that's probably why he was delusional enough to give us $5. So thank you, Bill.
Well, no, you have to buy him a drink next time. I guess
I do. Yeah.
I have never gotten, and Shannon has never gotten Dormont loves Brian or Shannon, so I think that's a big deal. Wow. I absolutely love it. Bill Frost, welcome to the show, my friend, and thanks for the tip. You know what? We need to have a Tony Defeo appreciation club. That's what I'm looking at, my friends.
Well, there's the start of it right there.
So let's talk about this now. Was the Steelers running back? Excuse me. Was the Steelers running game bad? Were the running backs bad? Or was the offensive line, when you're talking about the rush game, horrendous? Shannon White, thoughts?
I think that they're still having some of the same issues. In the preseason, they were having communication issues and missing assignments and allowing penetration right up the middle, whether it was the run or the pass. But they kind of cleaned it up the last preseason game. And I thought yesterday they were more stout up the middle for the most part, especially in pass protection. Now, the running game, they're still not getting any push. And I think part of the problem is they are still predictable. Their best plays are the end arounds and misdirection and sweeps with Claypool, or they have other guys that can run those plays. But when they just try to do straight drop back handoffs from under center, by the time they get the ball, the running back gets to the line of scrimmage, there's no push, there's no holes there. So they're never going to be a powerful run blocking line, but I think they can work good combinations, and that they will be able to improve that running game once they show that they can throw the football down the field, particularly over the middle and down the seams. But until they change that and show they're capable of that, I think they're going to continue to struggle trying to run the ball.
Tony, your assessment of the offensive line. You could do it as a whole, or you can split it in half. You can go one part rushing, the other part pass blocking.
Well, it looked to me like, as far as the pass protection, that Trubisky didn't trust them, or they didn't trust the line, and they asked Trubisky to get rid of the ball early. It seemed like, it was like 3 or 4 step drop, get rid of the ball all game long. That's what you saw all game long. So it's hard to evaluate the pass protection because he didn't really stand back in the pocket for very long. As far as the run game, like Shannon said, there was no push. Harris had 23 yards on 10 carries, and their leading rusher was Chase Claypool, again on sweeps and jet, that kind of thing, gimmicky kind of plays. So I would say my evaluation of the line is the same as it was last year. It just really needs a lot of work. They need to figure some things out collectively, because it's just it's again, like Shannon said, until they prove that they can be more aggressive down the middle of the field, they're going to continue to crowd the box. And what did Chase Young say at the end of 2020? We exposed them. The league has figured them out, and they got to do something to change it, or this offense is going to continue to look exactly like it's looked over the last 2 years.
It's very true. So, Tony, I'm going to ask you this question. The wide receivers on offense, what is your assessment of them? Because there were not a lot of receptions. There were not a lot of receiving yards. I think Jeffrey Benedict might have put this in the live chat, saying that Juju Smith-Schuster in the first half probably has so many more receiving yards than everybody else. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Where do you rank the wide receivers in this game?
I'd say maybe Chase Claypool with a slight edge over Deontay Johnson, and everybody else. Pickett didn't really do anything. Nobody else really contributed. So I'd say Claypool a slight edge. I didn't see a lot of separation. But then again, if you're so predictable, you're not going to get very many chances. What they expect these guys to do is catch a pass 5 yards from the line of scrimmage and beat tacklers, down the sideline. And that's the same recipe they've been using the last few couple of years. So I didn't see a lot of separation, but then again, I'm not exactly sure if that's their fault. Like, I saw a lot of opportunities where George Pickens was one-on-one. And I'm like, George Pickens is one-on-one. Do something. Be aggressive. Give us another Martavis Bryant moment, like in 2014 when I was at that stadium and he went 95 yards. Give us another one of those. And they didn't even try it. There were really no deep throws all game unless there was there were really no deep throws the entire game.
Tony, where is the wide receiver stable in your mind?
Did you say Tony or Shannon?
I'm sorry,
Shannon. To me, there was some open opportunities yesterday, but Trubisky doesn't anticipate throwing lanes coming open. If it's there and he has a direct sight line, he has the arm and the ability to get it there. That's why his best plays is when he rolls out or extends the play, and then he can get a direct line where he can see the play develop. But he doesn't anticipate well, which is something that Pickett does do. And we've seen in the preseason where Pickett was throwing guys open. There was one play in particular where Freiermuth was even and was covered, and he threw the ball to where he anticipated where Freiermuth was going to come open, and he did, and it was a big play. So they're going to have to use Trubisky differently if they're going to be successful in the offense that they're trying to run right now. Because with Harris's injury and the line still developing, I think that the passing part is going to have to come before the rushing success. So there was a couple of times the Pickens, as Tony said, had a great matchup, and they didn't even look at him. I mean, he just did not even look at him, and Pickens was visibly frustrated in the third quarter, and you can understand why. Because if you know you can beat your guy, but they're not looking at you at all, and everything was, again, that little short passing game, it had to be frustrating for the young man. So I think that Canada just needs to call a game that's more suited to Trubisky's strengths than he did this first week.
Overall, Tony, what do you think of the play calling?
I'm not that happy with it because it's what we've seen. Again, it's what we saw last year and maybe basically the second half of 2020. And they were supposed to be you were expecting a more dynamic approach with a mobile quarterback, a more mobile quarterback in Trubisky. So I wasn't that happy with it but then again, you don't know why it's like that. Are they so convinced that the offensive line is a liability that they're not willing to change? So I don't know why they're calling the plays that they are calling. Clearly they want these plays to work, but they keep calling the same ones over and over again that haven't been working. So I don't know what I wouldn't give it. I'm not very happy with the play calling.
Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. And, 3 sacks from Mr. Highsmith. Fantastic. I know he benefits from Mr. Watt being on the field, but still 3 sacks is phenomenal. And they also did a great job in stopping the run yesterday. This is a guy that I'm going to bring up and talk to Shannon about first. A guy that you have been, reticent to say that he should keep his job on the team, and it's Devin Bush Jr.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about Devin Bush.
We have to.
Yes. Well, I see progress yesterday. I seen him flowing towards the football. And again, as everybody kept saying last year, part of the problem was the defensive line wasn't keeping him clean. Well, you see what a difference Tyson Alualu makes. You see what a difference, we know how great Hayward is, but Ogunjobi, he played an excellent game yesterday as well. And even Chris Wormley stepped up. Not being required to be a starter, but being asked to be a rotational piece. He seemed like he was more effective yesterday. A couple of times he stood his blocker up and filled that gap. And that allowed Jax and Bush to flow to the ball. And that's what Bush is. He's a pursuit linebacker. If he has to take on blockers, he doesn't. Now, Jax can, Bush cannot. But I thought that Bush made a step in the right direction. Was he spectacular? No. But he was part of a great overall defensive performance. And I will be more than happy with that if he can continue that moving forward.
Now, let's not talk about Bush, but let's just talk. Is there any weak link on that Steelers defense?
I didn't see it yesterday. I didn't see it at all. It was one of the most impressive defensive performances I've ever seen. When you consider that the offense only had the ball for 26 minutes and change, and everything that they had to endure. That goal line stand at the end, in the final 2 minutes was incredible, and to keep up that kind of intensity for 70 minutes and continue to turn the Bengals away. I didn't see a weak link yesterday. I mean, I think Miles Jack is going to do wonders for Devin Bush as far as making him perform like the player he can be, keeping the pressure off of him, because he's a stud. I mean, he's a stud. Maybe he's not the player he was 5 years ago when he first came in the league, but he's still a really good, dynamic inside linebacker. Now, I mean, that might change as far as a weak link starting this Sunday at strong side outside linebacker without TJ Watt in there. But as of yesterday, this looks like a dynamic, dominant defense.
I concur. Shannon, thoughts about that?
To me, the biggest weakness, and it's been a weakness for a Steelers 3-4 for quite some time. Ryan Shazier helped take care of that, but since his injury, it's returned, and that they had Spillane in there as their nickel linebacker, and I do not understand that because his weakness is coverage. So it was even pointed out during the game by the announcers that the Bengals were trying to get their offensive players matched up with Bush or Spillane when they were in the game in coverage because they thought they had an advantage there and they could get first downs. And so the NFL sees, it's a copycat league, and they know that's a weakness for the Steelers. So I think it should be Jax. I think he's got plenty of speed, and I think he would be a better option there. At least Bush. I do not think Spillane needs to be the only coverage linebacker on the field.
All right, fellas. So we have had a great show. It has been so much fun to talk about this game because I'm going to say it loud. I don't care about all the problems and how everybody's worried about next week. One thing that drives me crazy, and somebody came in the live chat yesterday and they said, yeah, what we have to do now is I hope they lose all their games so they can fix that offensive line. And sorry, it's not going to happen. And that's just, that's ridiculous to me. But with that being said, I really thought the Steelers came out. I thought they looked strong on defense. I thought they did the best that they could on offense with the offensive line, because when you do not have a running game, it's so much harder to complete passes. So I'm anxious to see what happens in New England coming up this week. I hope all these guys get better soon, and I'm hoping that we have a happy hangover again next week. Any final thoughts, Tony?
Well, as it was a great win. I mean, now that we are learning more about the Watt injury, and I think we were kind of already hopeful about the Harris injury, I think it puts some of the luster back on the victory. I think you lose that guy for the entire year. I think that it's hard to celebrate a win like that. But doing what they did, that defensive performance was so incredible, and the guts that they showed, the intensity they just never relented. It was an incredible win, and if not for the injuries, I think we would be all a little happier today about what happened on Sunday.
Shannon, your final thoughts, my friend.
Well, I have to admit, when I heard about the all black Air Force One tennis shoes that Tomlin bought for the whole team, and in a way to try to, unite the team as they go into hostile territory there in Cincinnati, I thought that a lot of people was talking about how brilliant it was, and I just didn't get it. But for what it cost, if that's why they played, one of the reasons why they played like a unit yesterday, a complete cohesive unit, and the defense looked as good and as great as it did, then it's well worth whatever those shoes cost. Me personally, I've always thought all black shoes are very ugly. And so, when I first seen them, I went to a private school where we had to wear all black shoes. And so I've always hated all black shoes. And so I thought that I said, oh man, them shoes, that's a waste of time. That's kind of gimmicky. But hey, if it works and they play that inspired every week, worth every penny. So I will say that I was wrong. And and hopefully it'll continue to work going into next week against the Patriots.
Well, they weren't all black shoes, right? Originally, Nike was out of that model in black. And it's funny because this is the rallying point around this, because this is the degenerate shoe, I guess. And so sending a message to his team that you could rise above that. And I thought that was fantastic. But Chris Sable, the renowned artist, had a spray paint so many pairs of shoes yesterday around. I think he got the call very early in the morning over the weekend, and he had to go ahead and spray paint those. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So, gentlemen, let's get on out of here. Let's thank everybody for coming in. Remember, we can't do these shows without you. There's so many great shows coming up. The next show that you're going to hear on the audio side is going to be, of course, Jeffrey Benedict and the Cutting Room Floor, followed by The Fix, followed by The Scobro Show, followed by Let's Ride. But let's not forget about the Mike Tomlin press conference recap. Wow, recapping a great week. And we're going to have another great week. So I am absolutely pumped. For Tony Defio and Shannon White, my name is Brian Anthony Davis, and I've got to ask you this. Well, no, I don't have to ask you anything, because you know what? I'm not the one asking. So let's try this again. Just when you think you've got all the answers, Tony Defio,
we keep changing the questions.
Shannon White, you know what to do. You know how to take us out of here. Let's do it. Woo! Woo indeed. Steelers are 1-0. Celebrate.